Mark Boeke, Hubbard, Iowa.
Nice to meet you, sir. Tom Mulholland.
So, I know nothing about the grocery business. But I'm part owner in
Well,
a grocery store.
I think we're ready to interrupt your lunch a little bit. Here to talk a little bit about grocery stores. And as Governor Branstad mentioned, and I'll just start, I'm Brian Lohse, state representative, but in my other life, I owned a grocery store up until January, this past January in Bondurant, Brick Street Market. Small little grocery store. I wouldn't necessarily characterize it as rural. And the reason I said I'll get to a couple of questions that'll get a little bit more about your communities, but Bondurant's always been, since I've lived there, one of the fastest growing communities in all of Iowa from a percentage standpoint. So when I moved there, we were at 2,000 people, 1,900 people in the year 2000. This last census, we were just a titch over 7,500, and we continue to grow. So don't tell the USDA, though, because we still qualify for the rural loan programs, so for housing. But we'll start with, Mark, tell us a little bit where you're from and your grocery store and your community.
I'm from Hubbard, Iowa. How long do you want me to speak?
Just, as long as you need, but there is a clock up there.
Okay. I'm from Hubbard, Iowa. It's a very small town, 850 people. Grew up with a grocery store in our community. In fact, when I was young, we had 2 grocery stores. About the turn of the century, we had a devastating natural gas explosion in Hubbard. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it just it destroyed our grocery store along with many other buildings in town. It took out almost a city block on both sides of the. It was quite traumatic, and we lost our grocery store. We had a nice family in town that ran the grocery store for years and years, and it was just like they hit a brick wall. They were at the age where they decided they didn't want to rebuild. The grocery store was damaged beyond repair. And so the community got together, and it was through the Hubbard Main Street Initiative, kind of started by the Hubbard Development Corporation, raised the money to build a new building. And built a building. In fact, had some, we went 3 years without a grocery store. I had 3 kids, probably 8 and under at the time, and running a business of my own. I'm a funeral director by trade and got a business that's been our family over 130 years. We didn't have time to go grocery shopping and then try to figure out what to do with our young kids, and it was hard. But we got a building built, and we went through a couple different managers and got a good one, and that lasted until he aged out. And he said we're going to he had 7 or 8 grocery stores, all little towns. He said, I'm going to put them up for sale. If nobody buys them, I'll just close them. So the community got together again, raised the money to buy the business, the inventory and equipment, and that was 3 years ago. We've struggled to make ends meet at that point, but we just keep plugging away. We keep trying.
So what's the name of the grocery store?
It's Hometown Foods.
Okay.
Actually, it was Hometown Foods. Now it's Hometown Grocery.
Okay. And it's owned by the community.
Owned by the community, okay. And so there was many people that the Development Corporation went out and said, we're going to buy the grocery store. You can either invest or you can donate. And a large number of people were smart enough to donate. A few of us didn't have the foresight to say, I'm going to invest in it. I'll put a substantial amount of money in as an investment, and so that threw us investors into actually, unbeknownst to us, kind of becoming the board of directors because the other people that donated said, that's your baby, you invested in it. So we've been, and so we've got a couple farmers and a funeral director and a teacher, and nobody knows anything about the grocery business itself. And we're trying, and so we inherited a manager that that was not probably the best decision. We made a lot of mistakes just not knowing what we were doing. We got a fantastic manager now, just works his tail off, and but it's just still a struggle to keep a small town grocery store going. We come out, we're doing better all the time, but especially with our new manager, but we just don't quite come out in the black.
Sure.
So,
Tom, tell us a little bit about your grocery store.
Mulholland started in 1875 as a dry goods store, and at one point my grandfather added groceries in there, a small cash and carry grocery business in one corner. That took over the store. When my grandfather retired, he sold it to the person there that was meat cutting there for many years since the Korean War, and to my father. They were partners. I started working there full-time after high school. I'd worked there since I was,
too young to
since the
technically
60s.
work. Yeah.
long ago. But I couldn't get along with my dad's partner. After a number of years, I left. I started commuting the 75-mile round trip to Omaha. Became the meat department manager of a small store there that had the highest reputation in Omaha. We won, this little tiny store won Best of Omaha for the meat counter while I was in charge. All of the TV and radio stations, if they had a story to do, they would come there. I was interviewed one time for 3 different stories by 3 channels in 2 days. So I was comfortable in front of a camera. A couple of years after I left Mulholland's, my dad and his partner couldn't get along together anymore. And Dad said, I'm close enough to retirement age, I'll just go ahead and sell my half and let it out of the family after well over 100 years. It was out of my family for 17 years, and I had tried to buy it back before. I walked in one time, just in time to see him shaking hands. He just sold the business to somebody else. And that hurt. But I did get the opportunity. They came to me when they wanted out in 2008, and I got that opportunity to buy it back. As he said, it was a struggle. I'd done many things in the grocery store, but running one was a little bit different. And I struggled at it a little bit. We were getting by, but just barely. I heard about a business pitch contest years ago called Dream Big, Grow Here. And I managed to win the statewide contest, and a young lady named Kim Reynolds handed me a $10,000 check. And that kept us going. But the notoriety, the press that we received from that really changed things for me also. And it allowed the store to start doing much better. I was well known for our quality meats, the homemade sausages, the smoked bacon that we did. I had customers that drove from Ames, which was 3 hours every year, to come pick up potato sausage from Bellevue, Iowa, and Bellevue, Nebraska, Lincoln, St. Joe, Sioux City. All of these customers came because of the products that we put out. And I was proud that my store was able to thrive. There were 4 grocery stores there when I was a kid, and we were the only one left. In the time that I had my store, within 45 miles, 6 communities lost their grocery store, and I was able to see how horrible that was for a small town. Right. But my store was doing well. And then one night it's gone in a fire. So my town became a food desert.
You're in the process of rebuilding, though, is that correct?
What's that?
You're in process of rebuilding, is that?
I'm working at it.
Good.
We've had a lot of delays and struggles on that, but I'd won a nationwide award from Facebook for community support in a group that they put together. And then Facebook reached out to me and asked if I would be okay with them doing a documentary about my business. And what they wanted to show was the importance of small businesses to their community. And I thought this was going to be a couple of people with a camera and somebody asking questions. And a 27-person film crew showed up for 9 days. On the second day of filming, the person from Facebook that was from San Francisco said, I'm going to go back home, but I wanted to say goodbye before I left. She said, have you checked out anything about the director? I said, no, she's young. She seems to know what she's doing. She won an Oscar for her first documentary. 9 days from now, it's one of 3 finalists for Best Short Documentary of the Year in an international film festival. But
we'll get that link.
Things like that that have really made me a little bit more recognizable in the state and in the country.
Sure, great. I know we all face challenges, especially food supply lately. What have been some of the greatest challenges you all have had? Tom, we'll start with you. As far as food supply and getting abundant, nutritious food on your shelves.
Part of the issue, especially with a small town store, is getting the experience and learning what is going to sell well enough. You know, you aren't going to have to mark down 2/3 of a case or whatever. You know, when COVID hit, the man that I worked for in Omaha was a fantastic business owner, manager. He had decades of experience, but yet when COVID hit, he had just retired, and now I'm facing things that this guy with over 50 years of experience had no idea what to do, and nobody else did. You know, the United States hadn't faced anything like that in 100 years, and you know, it was devastating. When we would get our invoices, you know, my people that were checking off the groceries, they'd use a yellow highlighter to mark off the ones that we ordered but we didn't get, that were zeroed out. We had whole pages that maybe we got one item out of a whole page of that. We were getting 25% of the items that we ordered. And, you know, maybe there's something else out there that's like that we can find, and you know, we really struggled on that. But all of the pressures that we were facing, you know, I felt a responsibility to my customers to be able to get them the things that they wanted. I had a few people yell at me because we limited toilet paper those first few weeks, or paper towels or whatever. And, well, who made you God? I'm not trying to hurt you, I'm trying to help everybody. Yeah. You know, and that type of thing. And, you know, like one time my Tuesday morning delivery showed up Thursday night. My Friday delivery, the order was due before I got the previous order. I was supposed to go to Kansas City for a baseball game, and I had to go to the warehouse and pick things up. I was at the warehouse when I should have been in Kansas City for that ball game that I had tickets for. Sure. But I'd promised that I was going to have some things for a meeting, and that was the only way I was going to get them. Yep.
Mark, what about you? How did Hubbard overcome some of these challenges? And I'm sure you faced a lot of the same ones.
We just lived through it, and not being the guy that puts the orders in or receives the orders. I just watched, you know, we're kind of a daily shoppers. We're so busy in our business that, and we kind of figure out in the middle of the afternoon what we might want to have for supper, and we pick it up on our way home, you know, and that was something, when you lose your grocery store, you just can't function that way anymore.
I'm assuming there's a Casey's in each one of your towns, right? Okay.
Yeah. And well, and then another thing that looms on our heads is we got a Dollar General that's being built as we speak, so we don't know how that might be the final nail in the coffin. I don't know. We hope not. We hope people will be smarter than that, but it's going to be up to the people, is what I've made my mind up. So.
Yeah, and we face those same challenges. I mean, as Tom said, in Brick Street Market, same thing. We'd put in our order. You know, it was very random as which items actually came in. Rarely did they come in with the amount that you had ordered. You may have ordered 10 cases of something, you'd get 3, even if you were to get it at all. So getting through that, it's gotten a little bit better as time progressed. But even at the end, it was before we sold, it was still a challenge. One of the fun stories that we started doing, and kind of a success story, two really, we had started delivery in the November before COVID hit. So that ended up being my job since I wasn't in the legislature anymore. I was the delivery boy. So, we always take owners, we do about anything we need to do, but we also learned that we could order as much toilet paper as we wanted from our supplier for our own personal restroom in the store, as opposed to what's on the shelf. So that's how we got through people's toilet paper's needs, was we'd sell the stuff that was intended for our restroom, because not a lot of people were coming in. They were all at home. So it actually worked out quite well. But just moving on a little bit, what do you think the state can do from initiatives, the state, private business can do from an initiative standpoint to really drive business? And I'm going to just back up just a little bit. The governor talked about all these investments we've made in housing and broadband, and is happy in my time in the legislature to help her do that. In my mind, we can have all the housing we want for people to work and have the broadband connectivity, which is very important. But they're not going to move to a town like Hubbard or Malvern unless they also have some place reasonable to get groceries. And that Dollar General is not quite it.
No.
Because we have one too. But how do we then ensure that they have a place to go get their groceries after they get done working through their broadband in a house that we've been able to invest in for them for housing? Where can we go as a state? And I ask this as a legislator as well. How do we spur on and help grocery stores in rural areas either to get started or to sustain themselves?
Kansas State University, the state of Kansas, realized how important rural grocery stores are to their state many years ago, and they started the Rural Grocery Initiative. And I've been paying attention to that and been part of that for the past many years. As a matter of fact, they've now grown so much, they've gone nationwide, that next month they're going to convene their first board of directors, an advisory board, and they've asked me to be part of that.
Right.
But realizing how important things are like that for the small towns. As you said, people aren't going to want to move to a town that doesn't have a grocery store. My town has so many things going for it right now. They're in the process of adding on to our high school now, expanding it, going to turn it into a K-12 school. We just started a 50-unit housing subdivision, and right in front of that there was an abandoned rest home that the school district has bought and is turning in with many, many grants and donations. They're turning it into a child care center that'll take care of about 175 kids. So my town has so many things going for it, and they need a grocery store. Where our grade school used to be 7 miles out in the country and in between a number of communities, now it's going to be here. All of these people are going to be coming to pick up their kids in my town, and that's a perfect time to get them to shop. When my store disappeared, it didn't just hurt the people there, but the other businesses. All of the restaurants, they may use Cisco or whoever as their main supplier, but they still need to run to the grocery store 3 or 4 times a day to pick up this, pick up that. The other businesses that are buying cleaning supplies or whatever. These things were all there. Plus, as I said, I brought this many customers in from all over the area. They'd go and they'd buy gas at Casey's. They'd go to the restaurant down the street. People that would, plan their day around going to the doctor and the grocery store and the pharmacy and the restaurant. Well, if any one of those disappears, then maybe they're going to change their mind and go elsewhere. Sure. So it makes a huge difference. And what my business means to my community is amazing, and that's why I'm trying so hard to get it back. Right. I'm 63 years old now. My classmates are retiring, and I'm busting my butt trying to get back to work. There's so many things that I'm trying to do, because if I don't put that grocery store back there, my town is never going to have one again. Mm-hmm. And it's 12 miles now for these poor people, these elderly people, to go someplace else. They can't afford to do that very often with the way gas prices are or whatever. So now they cut back. Now they're buying canned high sodium things at Casey's, at the Dollar General. They're buying a lot of dried foods. They're not getting the fresh meat, the fresh produce. You know, Malvern became a food desert overnight. Sure. And I want to change that.
Right. And one thing, if you've never been to Casey's, one thing that when we started our grocery store that really pushed us to make that final decision, yes, this is something we're going to do, was one night just before Thanksgiving, my wife realized she hadn't bought the Cool Whip for the French silk pies, and I had to go to Casey's to get get Cool Whip. Well, you know what Casey's does not sell? Cool Whip. So so that's, you know, Casey having, and that's why I asked. You know, Casey's in community, they're a great addition on so many levels, but one of the things that they are not, and specifically, are grocery stores.
One of the, you know, I'm not saying Casey's, but a convenience store. One of the other towns that I talked about that lost their grocery store, the convenience store raised the price of a loaf of bread $2 a loaf overnight when that grocery store closed, because they could, because they had people locked in there.
Yeah. It's not quite the right answer. So,
yeah.
Mark, what do you see? What can we do as a state to help push grocery in rural areas?
I contemplate this a lot, and you know, I think the struggle, not because I'm buying this stuff and not because I'm putting it on the shelves, but it doesn't seem like our small town grocers can be competitive with Dollar General, and if there's just some way to level the playing field, you know, we have to charge more because we can't buy it for what Dollar General can buy it for, and it's nothing you can help, but it is a struggle, you know, to deal with. And I think I grew up in a community that had 2 implement dealers, a car dealership, 3 gas stations, a pharmacy, a furniture store, a locker plant. You can go on, and once that implement dealer decides to shut down, or the car dealer decides to shut down, they don't come back. I mean, not in a town of 850 people. It's work. It's a lot of work to keep things going. But like I say, if we could even operate on the level playing field, this seems like it'd be a tremendous help.
I'll just add to, Tom, you mentioned the Kansas State initiative, the Rural Grocery Initiative that they started many years ago, and I actually, we tried to get an appropriation a few years, one of my first years in the legislature and had a discussion with Iowa State Extension about starting that program, starting a process of building that program out. And I'll give you a little more information about the program, because we looked at it and had lots of discussions with ISU as well as Kansas State. You know, it really, to me, this is one of the biggest things I think we can do to help Hubbard, to help Malvern, to help other small grocery stores. It's fine to pump money into you and give grants and all that's great. But I think one of the things that this program is designed to do is really do resources, provide resources to help get you off the ground, to help sustain yourselves. And if I recall correctly, because it's been a few years ago now, in having discussions with Kansas State, they've had real good success. They haven't staved off, I mean, they haven't brought grocery stores back to the same levels. They're not adding grocery stores, but the rate with which they're failing has dropped precipitously. So they're able to really been successful in sustaining these grocery stores in rural areas. And one of the things that ISU I thought was really, when we had those discussions, was not just look at rural grocery stores, but also look at even in metro areas, specifically ethnic grocery stores, the Mexican grocery store, the halal grocery store, those types of real small businesses that are usually independent, that they can also support. So I thought that was a great way. So I'm going to make another push to try to get that program up and running this year. And the other thing I'd say, I had a discussion too with some local people from Polk County. Everybody's familiar with the EBT card, you know, with welfare, the welfare EBT card. We all take it. All grocery stores take it. And it seems to me that, and I'm not sure how your businesses are built, but it seems to me that should be a way for local food pantries, and Luke's gone, I wish he was here, But for local food pantries to be able to use technology, especially today's technology, to basically turn a grocery store into a food pantry. So that rather than an EBT card that could come from a local food bank credit card that can only be used for certain products, the typical products, bread and peanut butter and those types of things. That way, the local food pantry doesn't necessarily have to house all this stuff. We have it at our store. I mean, all of those basics that they're usually handing out, and then allow us to communicate back and forth between the local food store. I think that's, to me, we have the technology. We've just never been able to implement it.
We had something like that in Malvern until my store burned down, and that was, it was a holiday item, but the Goodfellows was the name of the organization, and they would give out gift cards for my store, and they were only good for certain things. They couldn't buy, cleaning products or different things like that. It's kind of like EBT. They certainly couldn't buy the alcohol or lottery. But, we worked with them, and because it helped the community. I did so many things. I went to our food pantry, and I would talk to them and say, I'm going to be able to get deals on this, this, and this, in the upcoming months, things that I know you need all of the time, because I'm trying to help them stretch their food dollars, for all of these people. Because I may as well. I made a penny off of it or something, but I'm still trying to do what I can for them and help in any way. Years ago, I read a book when I was a kid. I read a book, and there was a comment in there, and it was the term noblesse oblige, which in that instance they translated it as he who can must. And now 45 years later, this is hitting me when the flooding hit my area the year before COVID, because I'm just over by the Missouri River, and our neighboring communities were underwater. So we did a lot for that. But people came to me and they gave me donations and said, do what you can with it. And they just handed me money. They'd give me a check. They'd give me an envelope with cash. They didn't want to receipt anything. Just do what you can with it. We took $8,000 in donations and turned it into about $80,000 worth of products from my grocery warehouse. But it was because I'm the one that had the connections, and I knew how to talk to these people. And that's how we were able to turn it into so much more. So that's why I did that, because I had the ability to do that, and I need to step up and do it. Secretary Neg said somebody's gotta. Well, that's what I'm trying to get back to do.
And I'll piggyback on that a little bit. After the tornado hit Bondurant and up to Marshalltown and Pella, that was one of the greatest outpourings between our distributor and between people in the community, coming to us and saying, how can we help? How can you distribute out to both Marshalltown and down to Pella? Our distributor was incredibly generous, but also the people were. We got to the point where we finally had to say stop. We can't use all of this stuff, and it's going to end up going to go to waste, which is a great problem to have, and kudos to Iowa. Mark, we got a minute. I'm going to leave the last comment to you. And what does a grocery store mean to small towns, and specifically in Hubbard?
Well, in Hubbard, we don't have a restaurant, so the men go into the grocery store at 9 o'clock in the morning and coffee. The women come in at 10 o'clock in the morning and coffee. And then at noon, 5 days a week, they serve noon meals. There's a place about a dozen people can sit in the store, but I'd say 80% of it's carry out. Men working over and grab their meal and go home and eat and let out the dog. But that's it. In Hubbard, we don't, like I say, we don't have a restaurant. That's our food source right there.
And your community center.
And our community center, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both for being here.
I got something. Can I just take 2 seconds? And I read this in the Register the other day, and it hit me so hard. This is an essay by Osha Davison, and I don't even know who that is, but it talked about the last days of the Schultz Brothers Variety Store in her hometown. And she poses this question. She says, what kind of community will we have And what kind of people will we have become when all of the Schultz Brothers stores, or whatever name, in all the small towns in Iowa have been replaced by Walmarts, Kmarts, and Targets? When our town squares stand silent and empty, when we have been divided into a few wealthy and many poor.
Well, I guess that sums that up.
That hit me pretty hard the other night when I read that in the paper.
Well, thank you both for being here. Appreciate everything you do in your communities. I know it means a lot, and we'll see what we can do to keep grocery stores alive.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.